You just got the final agency decision, your license is suspended, and you don't know what that actually means. You keep wondering, can I keep working? Is my employer going to find out? Or is my career just completely over? What can I do? The truth is, if you handle this wrong, even unintentionally, you can make things a whole lot worse. I'm Nick Dogle, professional licensed defense attorney, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you and walk you through what to do, what not to do, the correct steps to make to ensure that you can get your license back at some point. So you don't get blindsided by public records, missed deadlines, or career-ending mistakes that could keep you from getting your license back at some point. So let's talk about what you can do and cannot do immediately upon getting either a final agency decision after a contested hearing with a suspension, or you enter into a consent order with the suspension. So immediately, you have to stop working. You cannot work in that profession, and you cannot continue to do your normal course of business in whatever licensed profession you're in. That means if you're a nurse, you have to stop. You can't take any shifts. You have to stop immediately. Physician, same thing. You can't provide patient care. You can't write any scripts. You can't do any sort of administration of medication, nothing. Real estate agent, can't do any showings, can't do any listings, can't talk to people that are buyers or sellers. Same goes for any other licensed profession. If you're a GC, you can't even be on the permit anymore. So I've had a pharmacist in the past, and this was in Wake County. We go to a hearing, doesn't come out in their favor, and it ends up getting license suspension, ends up being for just 30 days. So a light slap on the wrist regarding a suspension. So that person knows not supposed to work, have to resign their job in the capacity as a pharmacist. Well, they end up still continuing to work. The coworker finds out about it. They mention something to the supervisor. Supervisor finds out about it, immediately terminates them and reports them back to the board. And they've made the situation a lot worse, because now that's going to end up with either a much longer suspension or a revocation. And you don't want either one of those. You have to cut your losses as you see them if you don't want to do any sort of appeal, which I'll get to later on in the video. So how would somebody find out that there is a suspension on your professional license? Well, this is not only public information, but boards and agencies will post this on their website, and they will report it, depending on your profession, to the National Practitioner Data Bank if you're a healthcare professional. If you're an insurance agent, they will produce it to the National Insurance Producers Registry. So it will pop up there, and so on and so forth, depending on your profession. But at the very least, it's going to show up on their website. So if somebody were to go on to, I'm just throwing this out there, the nursing board's website, and they type in your name and or your license number, it'll pop up with the final agency decision or the consent order, and it'll show that your license is suspended. In that particular example with Nursys, that's also produced to the National Practitioner Data Bank and also to Nursys, and that's Nursys. So it is going to pop up in 3 ways if you're a nurse. I once worked with a dental hygienist in Charlotte, North Carolina, who was suspended for a documentation issue. She entered in prior to coming to us with a consent order, and the result of that consent order, which she voluntarily agreed to, was, again, a relatively minor 30-day suspension. She thought no one but her boss would know. She wasn't represented all the time, so she had no legal counsel. She just went with it because she felt like it was the most logical, easiest option that she could take. And obviously, her boss found out, reported National Practitioner Data Bank because she's in the healthcare industry as a dental hygienist, lost her job, wasn't able to work, and it was very difficult for her to find a job in the future, that being on the National Practitioner Data Bank and on the Board of Dental Examiners in North Carolina's website. She tries to apply for a job a year later. This is well after the suspension had been lifted and her license was reinstated, and she couldn't get a job. Fast forward about 18 months, and then she was finally able to get a job, but it took her a long time, and it was probably unnecessary for her to enter in that consent order, and she probably could have had a better opportunity to fight it had she chosen to do so. You got to understand that the suspension is not only reported through the board on their website, but it obviously is public information, subject to any sort of public records request, which really isn't even necessary because people could just go on the website for the board. but it's also might be reported to a database that is run for your particular profession. So next question is, you have your license suspended. Can you appeal, and how do you go through that appeal process? So short answer to that question is yes, you can appeal sort of suspension that comes from a final agency decision. Final agency decision comes after you've had a contested case hearing with your board or state agency. Once you get that final agency decision, and if it's a suspension, you have to stop working. Now, you have 30 days from when that final agency decision is sent out to you to file an appeal in the Superior Court of North Carolina. It's a state court where you as the licensee reside. If you do not reside in North Carolina, then you file that petition for judicial review in the county where the board or agency is located. So you have 30 days to file that petition for judicial review, and I have another video. Click on that after this one that'll go into more details about petition for judicial reviews and appealing final agency decisions. It's really good stuff on there. But you do that, and then you have an opportunity for a Superior Court judge in North Carolina, again, state court, to hear your case. They'll get a lot of information from the board, and like I said, I'll go into more detail in that other video about that, but that is your automatic right to appeal. Unlike going to Court of Appeals or Supreme Court of North Carolina, where you have some sort of technical error that occurs or some sort of procedural issue that happened in trial court, for appeals to Superior Court from final agency decisions, it's an automatic right to appeal. But I mentioned before, where it's a final agency decision from a contested case hearing, that means if you voluntarily entered into an agreement, like a consent order, or you voluntarily gave up your license and a permanent surrender, then you can't appeal that. I would say the overwhelming majority, 99.9% of consent orders I've seen where there's a suspension or revocation or any sort of public reprimand, they would specifically say that it's not appealable to Superior Court in North Carolina. And that's true. So if you voluntarily entered into an agreement with the board, you're bound by it. And unfortunately, you can only appeal a final agency decision after you've had a contested case hearing and you get a negative outcome that is a public reprimand on up. The appeal process can be pretty technical. Most attorneys that don't do this area of law, they have a tendency to overlook some things because this is not a normal thing. It is a very niche area, and a layperson doing it most likely is going to make at least some sort of mistake. So you want to make sure that you know what you're doing from the get-go, because that is going to be your last opportunity to have anybody hear something before you get to the Court of Appeals. If you skip this process and you don't appeal it to Superior Court, you're not going to get an opportunity to go to the Court of Appeals or North Carolina Supreme Court. So it is very important to know exactly what you're doing. As an example to that, I had a general contractor client. They went through the process, had a final agency decision after a contested case hearing. They waited and they waited and they waited. 35 days comes around. They come to me and say, hey, I filed this. I got it in. I think I filed everything. I got it within the 30 days that they said. Can you take a look at it and make sure that I did it right? So look at it, was not done exactly right. The positive thing on that end was we were able to go back. We were able to do an amended petition, got the amended petition done, got everything refiled. We were able to proceed on after that point and get the other side served properly and then go forward with the appeal. Though if not done properly, the petition for judicial review can be dismissed. A judge may dismiss it with what's called without prejudice, which means you can you can fix whatever deficiencies the judge found in your petition for judicial review, or the judge can dismiss it with what's called prejudice, which means you're done. You can't refile anything, you can't fix any issues or any deficiencies in the petition. Your case is just dismissed, essentially. So the next question is, what are the reporting requirements and to whom do I have to report a suspension? A suspension is going to be considered an adverse administrative action. And if you are in the healthcare field, the National Practitioner Data Bank is going to know about it, and they're going to know about it from whatever licensing board, whether it's a medical board, nursing board, physical therapy board, whatever healthcare board that you're associated with, they're going to report it automatically. If you are in, let's say, the insurance field, not only may you have to notify what other states that you're licensed in that you had this suspension, but you're going to have to report it to the National Insurance Producers Registry. And that's going to be your responsibility. Unlike healthcare agencies and healthcare professionals, where the licensing entity alerts the National Practitioner Data Bank, the Department of Insurance does not. That responsibility is clearly on the insurance agent to notify the National Insurance Producers Registry that there's been this adverse action. On top of that, and you need to check with whichever state licensing entity that you're licensed in outside of North Carolina, that you may have to provide them with documentation that your license was suspended and report it to them directly. And you're probably going to have to do it within a specified time frame. Sometimes those time frames are pretty short, 10, 15, 20 days. So it's very important if you're licensed in, let's say Florida, to check with a professional licensed defense attorney down there and see what all your reporting requirements are in the other state. Let's talk about reinstatement. How can you get back on track and reinstate your license once the suspension time frame is up? So some boards will not revoke a license. Some boards will say, hey, we're going to do a suspension and then you could seek reinstatement. Other boards can do both and will do both. And those are the type of boards where if you're suspended for, let's say, 3 months, then your suspension will automatically be lifted and you will automatically be allowed to have an active license, and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to apply for reinstatement or do any continuing education courses or something like that beyond what you've already done. The boards where you have to reinstate your license or seek reinstatement after a suspension, those are ones where you specifically are going to have to do some sort of showing of competency and rehabilitation of whatever issue that you were having. If you've had a substance abuse issue, obviously you're going to have to show, that you've been in rehab if necessary, or that you're going and you're doing AA meetings, or you have a therapist, and or you have somebody that you're seeing that's an addiction specialist, or whatever the case. Showing mediation, or mitigation, I should say, is going to be paramount when you're seeking reinstatement of your license. Even if your license automatically goes back to an active status after suspension, you still want to make sure that you know what you did wrong, what you've done to fix it, and if you own a business, what policies and procedures you've implemented to make sure that never happens again, not only to yourself, but to your employees. So I represented a licensed clinical mental health counselors in Durham a couple years back. They had a 6-month suspension, and we were seeking reinstatement. This was a billing error. The board called it fraudulent. Client, before they hired, had entered into a consent order, and then they were having issues on reinstatement initially. So we were able to go with come up with a plan of action, and then they actually did the reinstatement and got it to go through. One of the biggest things that you always want to do is identify where the issue was, like I previously mentioned, come up with a plan of action to make sure that that doesn't happen again. If there are any sort of courses that are directly related to how that issue arose, for this particular example was a billing error, then we'll have the client do the continuing education courses on billing. And if a mentor is needed or a supervisor is needed, we'll go ahead and get that lined up. And if the board doesn't want somebody to be supervised or doesn't need somebody to be mentored, then that's fine. We can opt out on that. But presenting that to the board ahead of time is going to give you a greater likelihood of getting your license reinstated, in addition to the aforementioned continuing education course or courses that you had taken. So let's talk more about what do you do now and how do you cope in the next steps after your license is suspended. First off, you got to make sure that you stay as busy as possible. You don't want to get down. You don't want to feel down and out. You don't want to feel like, oh, your world's come to an end. And I know that's got to be extremely difficult, but you got to keep your head up. You got to keep yourself busy. The best way to do things like that is to volunteer. Try to get a new job doing something that pay the bills. Also volunteer. Obviously, if it's volunteering that would need the license that you just lost, you can't do that. But you can do Habitat Youth for Humanity. You can do other charitable organizations to occupy your time, meet new people. You can join support groups. Any sort of support groups would be helpful. If you have a substance abuse issue, make sure that you're attending counseling, you're going to STEP programs, you're doing something that you have the necessary to support not only to keep your mental health in check, but also to keep you occupied and rehabilitate yourself on multiple levels. Go back and finish up doing whatever courses might have been recommended by the board in the first place that you haven't done. Find new ones. This is an opportunity for you to learn more about your profession. So when you're getting your license back, you're ready to go. Maybe where you were working as a nurse and you realize, hey, I don't like being on the floor of a hospital. I'm not going to be in the ER. I'm not going to be in the ICU, nothing like that. I think I would like it better if I was in an adult care home place. Or maybe I like doing something that is going to be at somebody's house. Think about not only how you can improve in your profession, but what areas of profession, what actual jobs within your profession are you going to want, and where things went wrong and where you would be most happy doing what you actually like to do. For example, I've known attorneys over the years. They would start off and they would work for a large firm, and they would do that and they would be ground for years and years, and then wake up one day and go, I hate this. I don't like doing this at all. Well, they would think about it and they would find out something that they really want to do. Maybe it's the same area of law they were practicing, but do it in a different way. That could be working for the state, maybe it was running a small firm for themselves. Maybe it was a nonprofit, but that's an opportunity while you're waiting to get your license back to kind of figure out, all right, is part of what led to this issue not exactly what I was doing, but who I was doing it for? Or was it a little combination of both? And how do I keep this from happening again? So it gives you a really good opportunity to work on yourself and work on yourself in your profession, if that makes sense. The biggest takeaway from all this while you're waiting is don't isolate yourself. Join an aforementioned support group, make new friends, devote your time to whatever you like to do, volunteer, make it productive. So, ready to take the next step? To recap, once your license is suspended, you have to stop working right away. You also need to address and figure out what your appeal options, if any, that you have. You need to expect your suspension to be public, and you need to figure out if this is even worth appealing, or if you're just going to accept the suspension and then kind of work towards rebuilding your reputation and getting your reinstatement lined up. So when you get to the end of your suspension, you're in a better possibility of getting your license back. So I want to thank you for being here. Make sure to check out the video on Superior Court Appeals via a petition for judicial review of an adverse final agency decision, which would include suspensions and everything else. Thanks for stopping by and viewing the video. Really appreciate it. Hopefully this was useful information for you. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button for me, and check out the description. You hit the like and subscribe button. It helps to get this video out to more licensed professionals so we can help out as many people as possible. I hope everybody has a fantastic day. Thank you so much.